privilege for me to be able to introduce our last speaker for the day. She's a wonderful lady that has been advocating for ALD and, in particular, for women diagnosed with ALD for quite some time now. She's the founder of a nonprofit called Remember the Girls, and she's absolutely amazing. Please welcome Taylor Kane, who will share with us their family planning resource kit for X-linked females.
Hi everyone, I'm so glad to be here in person and sharing with you the Family Planning Toolkit, which launched just a couple of weeks ago. So starting off, a little bit about me. My dad, Jack, was diagnosed with AMN in the 90s and then with cerebral ALD in 2001 when I was 3 years old. That's when we found out that I was a carrier of the condition, and we were told that I would have a 50% chance of passing ALD down to my children one day in the future. Over the next 2 years, my dad's ALD progressed very quickly, and he went into a vegetative state and passed away about 2 years after his diagnosis. Over the years, as I got older, I became more involved in sharing my story about what my family had been through. In the center there, you can see an article that I wrote when I was in 5th grade that was published in a local magazine. And then in 2019, I published my memoir, Rare Like Us, From Losing My Dad to Finding Myself in a Family Plagued by Genetic Disease. So I've been sharing my story for a really long time, but over the years, I discovered that my passion wasn't only advocating for ALD, but specifically for carriers of ALD or females who are affected, since I grew up knowing that I was a carrier of the condition. My mom first told me that I was a carrier when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I don't remember when I first learned, just because it's always been something that's part of my life. I knew what ALD was. Of course, I watched my dad pass away from the disease. So I can't really remember like the day that I was told. It's just something that's always been a part of me, just a part of who I am. So I grew up knowing that I was a carrier, but I also grew up knowing that I had options when it came to eventually one day having a family. And I feel like knowing that there were options available for me to be able to have a son without ALD, if that's what I chose to do, made me feel a lot more secure about the future and not have to worry so much about what the future held. When I was in high school, I started learning more about what being a carrier meant. I also want to note that I know we don't really use the term carrier, but since I'm talking in a reproductive sense about X-linked conditions, I'm just using carrier in the sense of a genetic carrier. As we know, most females are affected by ALD, but I just wanted to point that out. So when I was in high school, I not only started learning that females were at risk of symptoms, but really wanted to start connecting with other carriers and especially other young women who are carriers. I felt like there wasn't that many people in my situation, since most women who I had met had found out that they were a carrier after having a son that was diagnosed. So I was really searching for other teenagers who were carriers of ALD, because there were so many things that I was unsure about, like, for example, with dating, when to tell a boyfriend that you have in high school, that you're a carrier of this genetic disease, and is that something you say on the first date? Is that going to scare them away? Is that something that you wait until you're in a serious relationship and then not know how they're going to react? So I ended up creating a Facebook group when I was 16 called YAC, or Young ALD Carriers. And this is really when I started connecting with other young carriers, but also start learning more in detail what options that I had for my family planning experiences by seeing what other carriers had been through. A few years later, I learned that there were many other X-linked genetic conditions, like Duchenne muscular dystrophy, for example, where carriers in these communities were facing a lot of the same issues that we were in the ALD space. One of them being physical symptoms and, always being told that we're just carriers, these are boy diseases, these are male diseases. Also having the 50% chance of passing the condition onto future children, so the family planning challenges. And then, of course, the mental health and psychosocial aspect of being a carrier, whether that be guilt from passing the condition down or fear and uncertainty for the future. So in 2017, I founded Remember the Girls, which is a nonprofit organization to bring together females or carriers that are impacted by X-linked diseases to advocate for the issues that affect us. And one of those main topics that we focus on is family planning options. So in the bottom corner, that is our old logo. We just rebranded a few weeks ago, so we do have a new logo now, but that one's probably still the most recognizable. So, when I talk about family planning challenges, like what are the challenges or what is so difficult about family planning as a carrier? So, all X linked carriers have a 50% chance of passing the condition down. So, a 25% chance that you would have a daughter who inherits the ALD gene, and a 25% chance that you'd have a son that inherits the ALD gene, and then a 50% chance that you'd have a child that does not inherit the gene. But as we know, like these 50-50 odds aren't really as straightforward than that, and it seems like sometimes families can get unlucky, and you can have, four people in one family, like my dad, his two brothers, and my aunt. They all had the ALD gene, so it's kind of confusing with the 50-50 odds, but you know what I mean. When it comes to family planning, when you are a carrier of an X-linked condition, there are a lot of different options. Some of them are natural conception with testing after birth, or of course now that 36 states have newborn screening for ALD. Also natural conception with prenatal testing, like CVS or amniocentesis. In vitro fertilization with pre-implantation genetic testing, or IVF with PGT. There's also the option of egg or embryo adoption, traditional adoption, or also not having children. So of course, it can be difficult to decide, if you do know that you're an ALD carrier and want to grow or start your family, determining what decision is best for yourself and your family. So I would say that the most helpful thing is speaking to a genetic counselor. But I feel like also hearing personal experiences of women who have gone through these options is really essential as well, and seeing, not only what they liked about these options or didn't like, but also what challenges that they faced. Like we know with IVF with PGT, for example, it can be incredibly expensive since it's often not covered by insurance. So all of these factors go into when you're deciding what option that you'd like to pursue. On the right, this is a word cloud. We asked a question in Remember the Girls a few years ago about what thoughts came to mind when thinking about family planning as an X-linked carrier. And you can see some of the words here. Some of the biggest ones are guilt, overwhelmed, fear, expensive, scared, but also hope and IVF. I also was starting to notice a pattern where I was meeting carriers and they would express to me that even though they had met with a genetic counselor or another genetics professional, they felt like all of the options weren't presented to them, only like a select few. So, because of that, we had the idea at Remember the Girls to build a family planning resource that was fully comprehensive of all the different options that a carrier might decide to pursue, but also included testimonial videos of X-linked carriers who have gone through each and every one of these options. So we worked on this family planning resource for a little over 2 years, mostly because it was just me editing all the videos on my computer, and collecting all the videos, compiling all the information. We had a lot of help from genetic counselors who recorded educational videos, which we're so grateful for them. But the family planning resource really serves as a one-stop shop for X-linked carriers to learn about all the options that exist. All the options are presented equally and in an unbiased way. We also have an animated video about X-linked inheritance, since really that's the first thing that a carrier needs to understand before going into their family planning journey. We have informational videos and written descriptions about all the options that were created by genetic counselors. Multiple testimonial videos of X-linked carriers sharing their personal experiences, include information about insurance coverage, what options are usually covered by insurance, which aren't, and also directions on how to find a genetic counselor. This was the initial sketch that I first did for the toolkit over 2 years ago. So I really imagined all the options being laid out side by side in no particular order, clicking into each option, and then being taken into a page where you see the information, you see the stories, and then you figure out your next steps. Um, and that is how the family planning resource was born. So, as I said, we just launched the family planning resource a little over 2 weeks ago. But as you can see at the very top of the Remember the Girls website, we have a tab that's completely dedicated to family planning. And when you hover over the tab, you're able to see all of the options. So there's getting started, adoption, amnio, etc. And these are in alphabetical order, which we did to make sure that there was no preference put to any particular option. So we just did them in alphabetical order. We also have an introductory paragraph, talking about the challenges of family planning and also explaining what an X-linked or other genetic carrier is going to find in this toolkit. As you can see here, this was quite similar to my sketch actually, but we have 9 different options. Finding the option that feels right for you, and then a carrier can see a brief description about each option and then click into the option to learn more. When you go into a specific page, you will be greeted with an introductory video where you will see a genetic counselor who will be doing a presentation between like 3 to 10 minutes, depending on the option, going over what the option is. And I asked the genetic counselors to make these very similar to what they would say in an actual appointment, when they're explaining this option is to you. And then I also summarize the videos in a written description. And we're hoping to take this written information and create like a booklet. So we'll also have a physical resource in addition to this resource online. When you scroll down, you go to Hear in Their Own Words and see the different testimonials of the women who have contributed. So I'm going to click, I think this will work. Okay, it's doing the rainbow circle. Okay. I just wanted to show like a minute to just give an example of what these testimonial videos look like. We made the decision, one, because it's way less inexpensive, but also to film them over Zoom rather than having like a recording studio, just because I feel like they're so much more authentic that way. Like I kind of was envisioning, you're Zooming with a person that you know who's telling you about her story, and I feel like that's really how these came out. Okay, it's not showing, so I guess I'll just switch back to the presentation. Sorry about that. But if you go to the website, we have, I think, over 24 testimonial videos from all these different options. And the videos also range from like 5 to like 30 minutes, just based on how much a woman wanted to share about her experience. I also wanted to note that almost all of the videos are from X-linked carriers. There were a few options that it was more difficult to find an X-linked carrier specifically who had gone through that. So we do have a few videos who are carriers of other genetic conditions, but they make that clear at the beginning of the video. So what is so meaning about these testimonial videos? Well, I think that this really is the key of the toolkit because you can read all the information that you want about what is IVF, what is adoption, what is amniocentesis, but you really need to hear from other women who have gone through it and hear what their stories were like to help you eventually determine what is best for you and your family. Also, just learning about the realities of these options. Like, none of these options are easy. All of them are going to come with their own challenges, whether that be financial, mental, physical, emotional, or something else. And before you start your family planning journey as a carrier or continuing your family planning journey, it's just so important to know what's ahead and what you can expect. Something that I really loved when collecting these videos is I found that even though each woman was talking about the option they chose and why, so many of them expressed that, that they wanted people to know that everyone has their own story, everyone has their own circumstances, and that while they chose this option, that might not be best for everyone. And I really felt that coming across in so many of these videos, which made me so happy, just seeing how Remember the Girls is such a supportive community in that way, with the understanding that there's no one size fits all when it comes to growing your family as a carrier. It's really down to you and what's best for you and your family. So, just to reiterate, of course, family planning is a super personal experience for all X-linked carriers and their families. And that one option that is favored by one individual or one family is, of course, not the option that's best for any other person and their circumstances. As carriers, I really believe that we should feel empowered and have the information that we need to feel in control of our health, in control of our family's health, our future family's health. Um, and I also would love this resource to encourage more carriers to meet with a genetic counselor. I know many of us have, but I also think that a relationship with a genetic counselor, can be ongoing, and that it's not just one sit down meeting, but evolves over time, and to have multiple different discussions and ask multiple different questions. So while we do have a lot of information from genetic counselors, we really try to encourage everyone who is using this toolkit to also make an appointment with a genetic counselor so they can have a more personalized experience. And that is pretty much it. We are looking to continue growing the toolkit. We're collecting feedback because we want to make it as strong as possible and as useful as possible. But I encourage any females here to join the Remember the Girls group. We have about 1,500 members from over 30 different X-linked diseases and in 30 different countries in the world. So we're a very quickly growing community, which I guess is great. I mean, I don't know if it's great to say that the genetic disease community is growing, but it's great that people are finding this group and utilizing our resources. So I definitely encourage you to join. And that's pretty much it. But as most of you know, I'm an open book, so you can feel free to ask me any questions about family planning as a carrier, but also about the family planning resource. And I'm looking forward to you all checking it out on the Remember the Girls website, which is just rememberthegirls.org, by the way. Okay, that's it.
Hello. I just wanted to echo what Janice was just catcalling from the back. What a great job. And that this is, I have looked through this tool. It's just such a great accomplishment. And I think it's going to help so many people because, as we know, people go on social media and it's so nice to have a place to get reliable information without judgment, that you don't have to put it all out there on Facebook to see how people respond and test the waters. But so I just think this is such an important resource you've created and led the way, Taylor. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So first of all, you're extraordinary that you've put this together and all your mock-up and everything. It's amazing, and the community is so lucky to have you and your initiative. I wanted to just point out, I love the term adopted embryo. I never heard that before, adopted donor egg. It's important to know, and I didn't know this, that it is not standard for fertility clinics to test for all X-linked diseases. And I'm here as the result of a carrier who didn't know she was a carrier, who was a donor. So I encourage people to discuss with their genetic counselors and the fertility clinics that they should make genetic testing for ALD mandatory so that there are no surprises.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And now that I think of it, I don't think in any of the testimonial videos that was even talked about as a potential risk. So I definitely am going to add that to our written description at the very least, just so people understand, that they should at least know that, if they are adopting an embryo from a couple or a donor egg, that that person may be a carrier of a condition that they don't know about, and that they're not testing, like they're not doing a whole genome sequencing or something.